What is up, you guys? This is All Day One on the PS4, and I'm going to be giving you a engineer build video. So this build video is going to be a skill build, damage over time, crowd control type of build. It's not going to be high amounts of damage. You're still going to be able to put out a good amount of damage to trash mobs, to bosses, but your main purpose really is to be able to keep damage over time on the enemies, keep them stunned, keep them pulled. You're going to be able to still do out a lot of damage, but if you're going to try to compare this build versus that max physical damage build, you're not going to come close to the damage. You'll probably be doing half the damage that a max physical damage build would be doing. But in my opinion, this is the most fun build to play as, or one of the most fun builds to play as that I've created. It's also one of the most useful builds as well when it comes to team synergizing, whatever, because your team won't be dying as much because the enemies are going to be crowd controlled. They're going to be controlled by being pulled in, they're going to be stunned, they're going to be on fire, slowed, all that jazz. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the stats. So I took off all of my I took off both of my accessories because they were giving me increase in strength and dexterity. I just want to show you guys the base stats that I use. So my strength, I have 95 strength. The reason why I have 95 is because when I add on my my accessory that gives me 17 strength, it gives me enough strength to the point to where I can equip or dual wield both of my weapon 1 and weapon 2. So that's why I use 95 strength. You don't have to, but I would recommend at least going for maybe just 90 strength. And this is for the players that are at level 150. So at least 90 strength is what I would go with. And then vitality, I would go with 60, or I went with 60. I don't see any reason to go any further than that. Intelligence, I stopped at 200. And then agility, I stopped at, or I put the rest of my points into agility. Dexterity, I got 130 points of dexterity and 130 points in luck. Luck, dexterity, and intelligence are going to be the 3 stats you're going to focus on the most. Intelligence, the reason why you want intelligence is because you want to be able to have more damage output for both your skill and gadgets, and then the effects on them also work a lot better, which would be the damage, I suppose. And the recharge time for both your skills and gadgets are reduced by a lot when you have high intelligence. And then for dexterity, the reason why you want dexterity is because you get increase in crit damage and crit damage and weak spot damage, as well as your gadget power. I guess the gadget power accuracy or damage for your gadget powers. I'm not exactly sure if it's damage or what accuracy, but it says it down there. So that's why I invested in that. And then also you do need dexterity if you're trying to unlock specific skills. And then luck, the reason why I got luck is for that crit rate, because crit rate is going to be important just in all types of builds. Crit rate is going to be important. And then also, I mean, you're getting high amounts of, or you have higher luck, so you're going to have a higher chance of getting greens and yellow drops from regular enemies. So like I said, luck, dexterity, and intelligence are going to be the 3 main stats you're going for. Or intelligence is your main stat you're going for. Dexterity and luck are your sub stats, I guess you would go for. And then strength and vitality would stop at a certain point, like at 90 and 60. And then agility would just have the rest of the stat points that you have left over. The reason why agility, you want to invest in agility though, is because you want to have a decent amount of movement speed, a good amount of movement speed, and a decent amount of defense as well. I think agility gives you the most defense, to be honest, more than vitality. So it's going to be very useful to have. And then we're going to go ahead and look at all the skills that I use. Whoops. So the skill sets. So I'm using handguns, and I'm using launchers. So for the handguns, I have Toxic Gas Blast, Blazing Blast, Electrodynamic Stunner, and Quick Shot. The reason why I have these 4 is because these 2, the Toxic Gas and Blazing Blast, you're going to use those to apply damage over time. Electrodynamic you're gonna use this about 2, sometimes it'll work on the first try, sometimes second try or third try, so on and so on. It's just you have to build up the stun in order to stun the enemy. So you can stun enemies on the first time sometimes, but on bosses sometimes it might take more than 1 or 2 times to stun them. But when you do stun them, they get stunned for a pretty good amount of time, and it also does damage, but it also makes it just so much easier for yourself and your allies. And then quick shot, the reason why you want this is because this is going to be a nice burst damage. Pretty much the only burst damage ability that you have, well, other than one of your abilities in the launchers build or section. But for your pistols or your handguns, quick shot's going to be super useful, especially when you can hit the enemy's weak spots. You're going to be doing a lot of damage with quick shot. And now for the launchers, you're going to use armor break, healing field shot, plasma blast, and graviton shot. So the reason why you're going to use armor break shot is so obviously you can reduce the enemy's armor and you can deal more damage, not just you but your allies as well. Healing field shot, just because it's good to have yourself as a healer, or not yourself as a healer, but you're going to want to have a nice amount of you have a nice amount of intelligence, so you're going to be able to heal yourself and your allies. Sorry if you can hear a baby in the background because he's crying. Anyways, so you're going to also use plasma blast. Plasma blast is going to be a nice burst damage. Also does a small little bit of AoE as well. It's not like a giant blast, but it does a nice damage, a burst damage. And then graviton shot is going to be the most important ability in this whole thing, because you're going to, when you use it, it pulls in multiple enemies. Sometimes it just pulls in one enemy, but any enemy that gets pulled in will get stuck, and just sometimes they'll go in a circle, sometimes they just stand still, but it does damage over time as well. And the higher level your graviton shot is, the more enemies it pulls in as well. So it's going to be super useful. And then now the way you're going to use your specialty, your special ability, or your signature, your super, it's L1 R1. You're going to only use that with handguns. Do not use that on your rocket launcher. You're going to use that with the handgun, because what that does is it reduces the cooldown of all of your recharge abilities, all of your abilities in general. So when you use it on your handgun, go ahead and just shoot the enemy, or not shoot the enemies, go ahead and switch over to the launcher and use graviton shot. After you do that, go ahead and switch back to your handguns and then start spamming toxic gas, blazing blast, or electrodynamic stunner. You're gonna just keep using those 3, or quick shot as well. Normally I only use quick shot if the enemies are pretty close to me, but you're gonna just keep spamming those 3. Or you can just pretty much keep spamming graviton shot, because it's going to go down to like a 5-second cooldown rather than it being a 63-second cooldown, or whatever it would be when with high intelligence. So you'll be able to keep spamming your graviton shot as much as you'd like, and that signature or that special ability lasts for about 30 seconds. So you have a long time before it wears off. So we're going to go ahead and look at the gadgets that I use. So I use first aid kit, ignition knife, toxic knife, and metamaterial camouflage. So you can either switch your first aid or metamaterial camouflage out with like a flashbang or electro stun or electromag stun trap. You know, actually that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna switch my first aid with the electromag stun trap, because it builds up. Actually no, I'm gonna keep the first aid. But the electromag stun trap builds, it's just like your stun ability, it builds up the stun charge. So sometimes the enemies will get stunned the first time, sometimes they'll get stunned the second, third, fourth, fifth time. Ignition knife is just gonna inflict damage over time with fire, and then toxic knife inflicts damage over time with poison, and they build up. So you can use these, and then you can apply your own, or you can apply your own ability, poison or fire, and then use the toxic knife or ignition knife after. And metamaterial camouflage, do not rely on metamaterial camouflage, because it's not going to guarantee you to be invisible or out of the sight of the enemies. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. So I wouldn't 100% rely on it. Now the next thing is I'm going to show you my gear, my equipment. So I'm going to go back to the customization data and load my thing. There we go. I got my accessories on. All right. So with the equipment, I have dual wield pistols and dual wield launchers. So the dual wield pistol I'm using long stroke 2++. It's not a bad pistol at all. I haven't really tried out any other pistols. I'm not a fan of the triple burst pistols. I prefer the semi. In my opinion, they're just stronger. But the stats you're gonna want to look for on them is damage to life forms, damage to mechs, physical damage, crit rate, crit damage, debuff stacking, and weapon damage. Those are gonna be the 7 you're looking for. And then the 8th one, you can have whatever you'd like to have on it. You can have damage when you have full HP, damage behind enemy's back, damage versus humanoids. You can have the metal gauge percentage or whatever it's called. You just choose whatever you like. But those would be the first 7 that I had said, which would be life form, damage to life forms, damage to mechs, physical damage or physical attack, weapon attack, crit rate, crit damage, and debuff stacking are the ones you're gonna want. And then GL6 Disaster. It's not a bad launcher. I only kept it because it's a legendary and it has a higher burst damage than the other launcher that I had. But the other one that I had was some type of inferno launcher, so anytime you shot, it would lay a napalm field or whatever, a fire field on the ground, and then it'll stack up. Once it stacks up to a certain amount, then the enemies catch on fire and they take damage over time. So that would have been super useful to have. In my opinion, that would be a better rocket launcher or grenade launcher than the GL6 Disaster. But like I said, the GL6 Disaster, I kept it because 1, it has a higher burst damage, and 2, it has 8 memory chips because it's a legendary. So you would go for pretty much the same stats that the long stroke has, but you would invest in explosive attack instead of physical damage. And then damage when near death, I don't really like that one because I don't like being near death, especially with this low of amount of armor or defense and health. But I mean, I couldn't change it out, so I had to keep it. And then for my accessories, I use display glass. It gives me +4 dexterity, +17 strength, and melee defense 101%. Now, this isn't the most ideal accessory to use. It's nice to have the 2 stats. I only used it for the strength because I needed the extra strength to dual wield. But I didn't really need the extra dexterity. What would have been nice is if instead you would end up getting recharge time. The recharge time would be the most useful, in my opinion, with this type of build, so that way you're able to keep spamming a lot faster than you already are. And then for my Barrett, I have defense versus humanoids 1.17%, avoid instant death when HP is 30.67% or more. So that means you can't get one-shotted if you have more than 30.67% health. If you have less than that, then you can get killed, you can be one-shotted. Or technically it wouldn't be considered a one-shot, but if you're less than a quarter of health, then a third of a health, then you're going to get one-shotted. And then it also gave me 19 dexterity, which is really nice. So that's pretty much it with this build. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys a clip of gameplay for this build so you can see how I kind of play. There's no real rotation. What I generally just do, you can play the way you want to play with this build, but I normally just, when I go in, I use graviton shot first, and then I just spam out my toxic, gas blast, blazing blast, electrodynamic stunner, and then I don't know why I have tranquilizer. Oh, I forgot to save it because I was testing tranquilizer out and it doesn't work. It sucks. Anything that tries to take damage away from me, or not damage, aggro away from me is just terrible in my opinion. I gotta save that real quick. Alright, but yeah, that's pretty much it though. So graviton shot, then you would use your handgun abilities, you would just keep spamming those, and then you can switch back to your launcher to see if your graviton shot is done with cooldown. If it's not, make sure you also do apply that the armor break on your enemies, especially if it's a big enemy, like a strong enemy. or durable enemy, whatever. You want to apply that so that they can get melted a lot faster or down faster. And then you also have your plasma shot that you can use somewhere in between your rotations. And then you also have your healing field, so don't forget about that. Your healing field, you're going to be able to heal yourself a lot, your allies a lot. It's going to be useful in a lot of different scenarios, different situations. So don't try to be Mr. Macho and not use your healing field, because you are going to be pretty squishy. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and show you the rest of the clip or the gameplay. And yeah, so if you have any questions or any concerns, let me know down in the comment section. If you have anything, any suggestions or whatever, let me know. If this helps you out, go leave a like, comment, subscribe. And yeah, so I will also in the future be making an Arphasis build, tank build. I have a tank build for her already, I just need to make the video. And then I also have a sword build for my character, or for your main character, as well as a tank build for the main character. So yeah, that's pretty much it. This is all day 1 on the PS4. Have a good day, good night, and enjoy the clip.